how we began our story I think people like to hear this. I always get a little bit shy about it, to be totally honest. So I have a stepdaughter, and her name is Amelia. And she and I met through my sweet husband when we were dating, when she was almost 5. So it was just before her 5th birthday. And I remember coming to the door for the first time. We lived in New York City. I lived the Flatiron District, and Frank, my husband, lived on the Upper West Side. We of course were dating at the time. He opened the door, and there was my sweet husband with Amelia, who was almost 5, and she has cerebral palsy, and she's medically fragile, and she's has her challenges. But picture this little ragamuffin of a girl with this big smile, and he had her wrapped like a monkey around his head, and so she had an arm that was dangling and a little face that was here, and then her legs were here, and he just had her wrapped around him, and this big, beautiful smile. So, this began really my journey with how Olume began. So as Frank and I fell in love, and part of how I fell in love was through her, I faced with him, and they're not my challenges, because it's not been my same loss, I would never say. I observed his challenges and his former wife's challenges in the myriad of complexities that come when you have a child who's medically fragile. And so fast forward to life, married. We came to a point when Amelia, she's 16 now, when she was probably about 11, and her medical complexity had gotten to a point where she really needed to have nursing care at home. And before that, we had always had help, a lot of help. But now she really needed nursing help. And we went and started asking agencies, well, here we are, we have insurance, we can pay for this, and no one would take us. There was no agencies that were willing to take this kind of a complex situation and that number of hours. So 16 hours a day is the number of hours she receives a day. So eventually we were able to get an agency, thank the Lord, to help us out. And but what we learned in the process is that it's not always easy for families to get that support, because there's only about 3 agencies in Connecticut that really serve this population. So we were able to be able to get those services, but other families may not have been able to get them. We were able to hire our own people and plug them into their system, and we've been able to sustain really well. And the nice thing about nursing has been for us that we have a higher level of care at home, which means that Amelia's not in the hospital as much or for as long, because we have much better interventions at home. And so she spends less time in the hospital. She gets fewer infections from being in the hospital less. She has a much, much higher quality of life. She doesn't get sick as fast or as often, because we can usually nip it in the bud at home. And we just have overall, we're able to have a team of people who surround her with care. So this is why we started Olume. It's because we wanted to bring an even higher level of care and support to these particular families. One thing I like to share too is that in knowing Amelia all these years, and in working with other aspects of her life, her school life and her social life, and as well as her medical life, I've met other families, and what I've done research, and what I've learned is some things, two pieces of data I always like to share about families who have medically fragile children. The first one is that this kind of a situation is very hard on marriages. And the numbers are astounding. 80% of families, couples who have a severely disabled child end up in divorce. Okay, so that's horrible. right? Second, much higher than the regular divorce rates. The second thing is that, and this is the one that also is really like hard to swallow, is that families who have medically fragile children also encounter bankruptcy at a much higher level. 60% of the families who have a medically fragile child will file for bankruptcy, not just once, but twice. Okay? So what this amounts to in a lot of situations is, single parents, often mothers, who are caring for their children, doing their best that they can. They can't always go to work because nobody's there when the child gets sick. Or they have nursing care that is not consistent, and people call out, and then they have to not go into work, and then they have to call out from their job, and they get fired eventually, or they just give up. So it compounds into their other areas of their life, their social life, their emotional life, their financial life, their health gets a toll. So, being able to go in and help families just to provide, the service that we provide is so important, because if we can be there and show up on time, be consistent, we can't solve every problem that they might encounter. We can't prevent them from, divorcing. We can't prevent them from having financial challenges. We can't make their children's social lives easier or their medical lives easier in terms of, a child who's in a wheelchair being able to one day walk. We can't do that. But what we can do is we can be there, okay, like a rock. We can be there to support the families when they need us. We show up, we give the services, and that gives the families the ability to have a normal life and be able to sort of start to correct for the other areas of their life that have gone out of whack as a result of this challenge. So I encourage you to have a story, to know why it is that you're in home health, why it is you are a care provider, why you chose to be a nurse or a home health aide or whatever it is that you're doing. What is your story? So I would like you to send me an email right now. So admin@illumecares.com. Send me an email and tell me your story. What is your story? Why did you decide to become a care provider? So admin@illumecares.com, and in the subject write my story. So it's going to be your story, not my story, your story. And in the body of the email, tell me what your story is, any part of it. Why did you decide to become a care provider? Okay? Thanks. Go make the world a better place. Thanks.